Super. So I will introduce myself. My name is Amanda Castellone, and I am the president of South Carolina Nats and the workshop committee chair. And I'm so pleased today to offer a workshop with our South Carolina Nats member and teacher friend, Dr. Fran Coleman. So, as a quick introduction for Fran, um, she is a teacher in the upstate. She teaches at Francis Marion University. She is a coloratura soprano and she sings jazz and rock. So she does it all. And that's why we're so excited to have her today. She's an active performer. She had gigs last weekend, this weekend. Every time I talk to her, she's got something going on. And I know she has a wealth of knowledge about the use of microphones. And that's what today's workshop is about. So we're so pleased to have you, Fran. Thank you so much for joining us. And so I'm going to let Fran take it away. She's going to present, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So thank you so much. Spirit hands for Fran. Welcome.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me. I was sharing with Amanda that it's kind of overwhelming teaching teachers, so please forgive me for my nerves. Um, so thank you. All right, so I created a oh, there it is. I created a PowerPoint, and if anyone is interested, I'm welcome to share it with you if you would like it. It's just got I put some YouTube videos in there, and then a bunch of different information, microphone recommendations, all sorts of different polar patterns that we're going to discuss. So again, if you're interested, please let me know. Also, if there's anything I did not cover today that you would like for me to cover, please don't hesitate to ask me at the end. I'll do whatever research you need me to do and I will report back. Okay, so I'm going to share. Oh, goodness. My desktop is a little scary. Sorry. Okay. So okay. So microphones and microphone technique. As far as the technique portion, it really depends on the polar pattern. That has a lot to do with the microphone technique itself. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time at the top discussing different types of microphones. In fact, we're going to spend a good bit of it talking about different types of microphones because you are only as good as your sound, right? Sadly, when we sing classical music, we are our own sound system, unless you want to determine the type room you're in and how that's going to factor into the sound waves you're creating as well. But when it comes to electronic music or amplified music, you are really only as good as your sound. So if you're using a crappy microphone, which I have a really old crappy microphone here that I'm going to use for you guys in a minute, and you're going to hear what I'm talking about. It makes a huge difference in what you sound like. Now, one thing that I did not cover in this particular PowerPoint or presentation is amplification systems. Maybe we could do that at a later date. I don't think we necessarily need anything big for the CCM category, but we definitely want something that's going to, be sufficient tone wise. So, that can be another day kind of thing. But anyhow, okay. So not trying to toot my own horn or pat myself on the back, but just so you know why I do what I do. After I graduated from high school, I didn't go directly to college. Just to give you a little bit of information, I started singing in rock bands, and I went from literally singing in show choir to singing in blues clubs and being fed gin and tonics, which was kind of fun, but probably not the way I would tell my students to go these days. But I wouldn't change anything for the world. So I played in several different touring bands from 95 to 2002. And we primarily did like college circuits, festival circuits, and so much further away from what live music is nowadays. We did all original music, and people actually bought our CDs and enjoyed our music, which nowadays all people want is recorded like covers. They want something they already know, right? So that's kind of sad in how it's changed our industry. But anyhow, so that was through 2002. And then I guess maybe it was 2003, but either way, I started undergrad in 2001, and I started, I had literally just come off the road with the Java Aquarium band, and they didn't know what to do with me. They immediately thought I was a mezzo. I know that none of you would do that to your singers, but that's what happened to me. I was completely pigeonholed into, oh, she's a rock singer, she must be a mezzo. Wrong. I sing Queen of the Night. But nobody really took the time to listen to me. They just assumed because it was a non-traditional style of music. And so that's really what I'm hoping to provide at this point, is a little insight in the fact that all music is representative of itself, right? Or of the previous. Jazz music was influenced by classical, and classical was influenced by jazz. Country music was hugely influenced by spirituals. I mean, everything kind of evolves together. And as long as we're teaching our singers the right way to use their instrument, it should cross boundaries, right? So anyhow, I continued to study classical music. And every time I would hit a wall where somebody would say, oh, I don't know if classical music is for you, it would just motivate me to want to go one step further and one step further. And so eventually I got my doctorate. And all the while, I was still singing with the jazz band, or the James Bond cover band, which was so much fun, by the way. They really don't make bad music for James Bond movies, do they? But anyhow, and that brings me all the way up to present, which, like Amanda said, last night I had a gig in Williamson, North Carolina, which was like 3.5 hours away. Fortunately, it was an early gig, so I wasn't up until 3 in the morning, but that's definitely something that wears on the voice, right? When you're gigging until 1 in the morning and then you got to get up and have a church gig the next day, it's definitely, you have to rely on your amplification. If you don't trust your microphone, if you don't trust your sound person, if you don't trust your PA, you're going to press, you're going to overuse the voice, and you're going to burn yourself out. So microphone technique is a very important thing for our singers these days. Okay. Oh, okay, there we go. So this all started, in the late 1800s with the, can you guys see my fun little picture down there of the cup phone, right? We all had one of those when we were little. And so basically by replacing that string with wire and sending audio waves across it, we were able to establish this concept of microphones or transmission that way. So what is a microphone? Basically, it's that electronic wire that sends waves or sound waves and transitions them into electrical energy. And so also, it's going to depend on the size diaphragm within your microphone as to what kind of tone you're going to get. And so we're going to talk a little bit about diaphragmatic size within the microphone, not our body. So okay, how did they come to be? Well, we've got a few different things. The first thing is the rise of mass communications, right? We've got radio, then we had motion picture, we had television, we've got news, we've got all these different things that need to be amplified, all the way starting back as early as, the early 1900s. So that was really the first motivation into the need for microphone use. But why it's so important, on top of the things that we've already discussed, it's just the industry standard at this point. Our ears have become attuned to amplified sound. We've just evolved in that way. So, I mean, I would love to go see opera more, but where I'm at in South Carolina, we don't get a whole lot of it. So I remember when I took my voice studio, this was obviously pre-corona, I took them to see an opera, and I had to sit there for a minute and let my ears acclimate to all acoustic sound. Even though we do it and we sing it all the time, every day, your ear is not used to it because you sit in your home and you listen to amplified radio, television, you get in your car, everything is amplified now. And our ears have gotten used to not having to work so hard. So that's one of the most important things, is that we're just used to it. But even above and beyond any of that, we have to understand that venues are not being built the same way either. And so if we don't prepare our singers to go out into the world and fill up a space that can't be filled up without amplification, then we're hurting them in the long run. and we could potentially be putting them out of a job. So yes, we want them to be able to sustain their own control. We want them to be able to project and to utilize or maximize their instrument, but we also want to make sure that they stay actively working. So, okay, polar patterns. This is going to be one of the biggest determining factors in the type of microphone you get and also in how you use your microphone. So if you're looking at a microphone, this is the best picture I could find. And if you look at different polar patterns, sometimes the 0 dB will be on the bottom and the 180 will be on the top. I'm not really sure why sometimes it's flipped. But if you look at your microphone, basically this center line is going to be where the diaphragm is, versus on a condenser mic, you see this is like your regular dynamic mic. So it's right around the center, whereas on the condenser mic, it's going to be more along this top line. And this one doesn't have it, but the one I'm talking through right now, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see there's a little bit of a line going through the center of it, right? So that's going to be where this green line is that you see on your screen right here. So what is underneath is going to be indicative of feedback, right? So and we'll talk about this in a minute, but those that have this kind of like, pardon my French, but like kind of butt shape right here, right? That's going to be one that is going to inhibit us from feedback more so than say a condenser mic or something that has a more well-rounded polar pattern. And we'll see that in just a minute. But this is what we're looking at, right? Is this 90-degree axis, 0-degree axis, and then how the microphone is picking up the sound within it. Okay. All right. So the different types of microphones that we can use. The one that's going to be the most popular for our singers and for particular. My apologies. Oh, I couldn't hear what you said. Siri. Okay. So the one that we're going to be using more predominantly in like our CCM categories would be the dynamic microphone. And we'll break this down a little bit later. But the first type that I have on the list here is your condenser mic, because this is the most highly sensitive of all the microphones. And you can get different size condenser mics depending on the size diaphragm in which is the condenser is built with. But that diaphragm is going to have a huge bearing on the sensitivity of the microphone itself. But ultimately, your condenser mics are going to be more sensitive to high sound pressures. So they're not going to, they can feedback more easily because they are very sensitive, but they're going to pick up nuance more so than like your dynamic mic, which is just going to give you kind of more of a blanketed, well-rounded warmth, kind of chiaroscuro, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's going to use the light and the dark and kind of blend them, whereas the condenser picks up all the nuance. The one thing about condensers, though, that dynamic mics don't need is that they need power. They need what's called phantom power. So your condenser mics are going to be really necessary if you're in the recording studio, or, you know, even if you've got a home studio and you want to record something, you're going to want to use a condenser mic, but you would need it to be powered. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. Now, your next type of microphone is your dynamic mic. And like I said, this is going to be your most standard kind of microphone. This is the kind you see just about everywhere. It's going to be reliable. It's going to be versatile. It's your old faithful is your dynamic microphone, and it's going to be less sensitive to sound pressure. So it's not going to feedback as easily, especially because of the type of polar pattern that most of our dynamic microphones carry. The third type of microphone is not one that we really see too much these days, and that's your ribbon microphone. And that's going to be one, and in fact, let me see if I go back, like at the very beginning, I think you guys are, this is a ribbon microphone, right? You don't see them very much anymore. I mean, you can buy them. They give you that kind of vintagey feel, right? And they give you kind of a vintagey sound as well. But that's not something that we would necessarily need for the CCM category. It would just be something you might need if you wanted to explore different styles of recording, that kind of thing. Um, and then the last one is a switchable or multi-pattern microphone, and that's the one that I'm speaking through right now. This is a Rode NT2. And so this one has multiple patterns, and we'll talk more about this again as we get further into the lecture. But basically I can switch different polar patterns, and so it's going to pick up in different ways depending on how I've got the microphone set. And a lot of the USB type mics that people use for podcasts or for doing Zoom type stuff these days, you can switch between your polar patterns, whether it be the cardioid or whether it be the omnidirectional, you know, we can talk more about that in a minute. But anyhow, that's kind of coming about more prevalent these days, is the switchable multi-pattern microphones. It's becoming more available on different types of mics. Okay, so diaphragm size. So we've got obviously small, medium, and large. Your small diaphragm is going to be something that you would use like, and I could have sworn we had one, but I don't have one. This is the closest thing I have to a small diaphragm microphone. And this is a GLS audio. We can, we'll hear this more later. This is going to be more used for like drums, miking drums, that kind of thing. So your small diaphragm is going to create low sensitivity. So if you can imagine the really, really high, bright frequencies that like a crash cymbal would make, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of frequencies that we would want to pick up with a smaller diaphragm microphone. Also, if you've got a really good acoustic space, like a recital hall or a church or something like that, you might want to use something with a smaller diaphragm rather than something like the condenser mic. The condenser mic is going to pick up nuance, but it doesn't necessarily, because it's so highly sensitive, it might pick up some of the overtones or reverb that's just being created within the space itself. And so the smaller diaphragm might be better for that. But rule of thumb down here, oh dear, sorry. Rule of thumb, oh, where did I go? Sorry. This little, how do I make this little guy go away? Okay, there we go. Okay. So the rule of thumb that I have put down here in the bottom corner, the bigger the diaphragm, the more sensitive to air vibration, meaning the more possible background noise you could pick up. So that's why I say sometimes the smaller diaphragm microphones are better to go as far as that goes. But your larger microphones, again, are going to give you the sensitivity you want. So if you're in a studio space, if you're in a recording studio and they've got everything soundproofed, then obviously picking up those nuances aren't going to be as big of a deal, rather than if you're in a large auditorium or somewhere that's going to be creating overtones and reverb that could be picked up on top of the voice, and it could get a little, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, distorted, yes, but kind of mushy sounding as far as sound goes. And then your medium one is going to be your hybrid. And that's going to be kind of the difference between the medium and the large. It's going to give you the warm sounds that you're looking for, but it's also going to help to retain some of those higher frequencies that maybe the larger one would distort. Okay, so I talk really fast when I'm nervous. Is everybody good? Okay, thanks. All right. All right, so now we're going to get into polar patterns. So the types of microphones and their use. So we've got our cardioid polar pattern, and this is going to be your industry standard. So like the initial picture that I had put up as far as polar patterns go, you can see in this particular pattern that this center circle right here is going to be that center line that we were discussing, on the microphone, this blue line, right? So if it's saying that it scoops like this, that means that everything beneath here is not going to be picked up. Therefore, if I turn around, if I'm singing, the microphone is not going to pick up the audience noise. And if I turn around, it's not going to pick up the drums, right? So your cardioid polar pattern is going to be the one that is going to restrict feedback more, but it's also going to give you the color that you want. And you can play with these a little bit more too, right? Because you can see that this bloom isn't just one dimensional, it's 3-dimensional. So it's kind of like, if you can imagine, all the way around, right? So if I wanted to sing here versus here, and let me see if I can give you an example. Check two, check, 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 check two. So if I'm talking directly into the microphone, you're going to hear, this is where you're going to get the most tone, is directly into the center of it in a cardioid pattern, right? Versus if I turn it like this, you're going to lose some of it, right? And if I turn it like this, you're going to lose all of it. But if you speak directly into the center of it, you're going to get the meat of your tone, right? So this is going to be the most common, but at every event I do, which most of the events I do are corporate events. So generally you're going to have some sort of talking head or a father of the bride that's going to want to get up, and they're immediately going to go, "Thank you everybody for coming out today." And they're going to hold the microphone down at their chest line. And then of course you can't pick anything up because it has to be sensitive. So proximity is going to have a lot to do with this cardioid pattern and the dynamic mic itself, because the dynamic mic is not amplified, or excuse me, it's not powered, right? The dynamic mic does not need phantom power. And the reason I'm plugged up through the PA for this particular system, or for this particular type of demo, is because the Focusrite, and I don't know what you guys have, but I'm going to actually turn this off because I don't need it now. But the Focusrite, or what you guys, if you were to be using some sort of an interface to speak through using a microphone for like your Zoom lessons or whatever, some of them have phantom power. My particular Focusrite, the Scarlett 212 or 2i2, does not have phantom power. So I'm not getting nearly the power out of this Rode microphone that I could be if I was running it through the PA, because the PA has a phantom power option on it. So that's why any of the demos I'll be running through my PA rather than just through this condenser mic that I'm talking through on the computer. Okay, so cardioid pattern, that's going to be the one that we're going to want for our CCM category, because that's going to be the one that's going to give us the warmest, most even tones. It's going to inhibit the higher frequencies from wanting to feed back, but it's not going to create any sort of like, it's not going to boost the bass. Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute, but that's the one that we're going to want to be looking for CCM styles, is this cardioid pattern, at least in live performance. Okay. I think I covered everything there. Yes. Okay. So now we have these things. Oh, and by the way, I put this little guy in here, this YouTube clip. This was a great YouTube video that I found, and he goes through all the different polar patterns, and you can really hear a difference. And so I spliced it up and I put it into each of these slides so that you can kind of relate what he's doing to the pattern itself or to the type of microphone itself. So again, please don't hesitate to let me know if you're interested in this PowerPoint. I'm happy to share. Okay, so you have your regular cardioid, and then you have your super or your hypercardioid. Can you guys see these polar patterns on the side, or is this like, so you guys don't see this like totem pole of people that I see here?
We can move it.
Oh, okay, good.
I've moved mine away so I can see the pictures.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to move mine, but okay. So basically the difference between the super and the hyper is just going to be sensitivity, right? If you can see underneath, you can see that the back, so underneath of the microphone, this particular portion of the microphone is going to have more sensitivity all like across the entire microphone rather than just through the top, right? Because this is really this, or this is really, going around the backside as well. So giving you more, I guess, surface room for sound, but it's going to make it, more sensitive to outside noise. It's going to pull in outside noise more easily. So, any of the cardioids are fine for live performance, but I would say probably either just your standard cardioid or your super rather than your hyper for live performance, just because you want to try and eliminate any possible reasoning for feedback. So, do these polar patterns, are they making sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions about those so far? Okay, great. All right, and then this next one is called a figure 8 pattern. And so this isn't something that we would deal with necessarily in live music. This particular microphone that I'm using right now has a figure 8 option on it. So I'm just going to play with this a little bit. I'm going to take this microphone doesn't really need a pop screen. It's because it's kind of sensitive to that. It kind of eliminates the pop, but I use it anyhow just because it's good to not have popping. But if I take it out of this, I'm going to take it out of the stand here and show you guys. All right, come on. Come on. Sorry for the noise. Ah. Right. Here we go. Oh, now it's stuck. Crap. Okay, so if at this point, and you can see, right? It has multiple settings. It has this figure 8 at the top, and then it has the cardioid, and then it has one that we haven't discussed yet called omnidirectional. Okay. So I have it set on the cardioid setting right now, but if I were to change it to the figure 8, basically it's going to make the bloom be here and here, and it's going to minimize the amount of sound that we can use around the side. So you can tell right now that I can slowly turn this microphone, and it changes it a little bit on the back side, but not so much on the sides, right? Whereas if I put it on the figure 8, you can hear it here and you can hear it here almost equally, but you can't hear it here. You see what I'm saying? So the figure 8 is really good. Like, say you've got in a world when we can actually have multiple singing that close to each other again, say you had like a singer on this side and a singer on this side, and you're in the studio and they're singing harmonies or something. The figure 8 would be a great example of why we would want to use that rather than the cardioid, which is a great sound, but it loses a little bit underneath, right? So the figure 8 is going to, it's going to reject sound on the sides, but it's really good for studio work. All right, let me plug this back in really quick. Give me just a sec. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. All right. So, and like I said, these little videos that I have down here, this guy is great. And he also puts this graphic in on top of the microphone. So you can see the polar pattern on the actual microphone itself. Like he's done it, with the wonders of video. But it's just like a minute or two on each of them. So it's not like a crazy long video, but something cool to have as a resource. I thought I'd put it in there. Okay, and the last one is going to be omnidirectional. And that's going to be one where, as you can see, it's just going to be your most highly sensitive. It's going to pick up everything you want. All right, so I put this on omnidirectional, and you can tell that if I talk into it here, or if I talk into it here, or if I talk into it on the side, it's not going to change. It's going to pick everything up. Now it's going to make it really, you can almost hear a little bit of feedback coming from it now, right? Because it's super sensitive to everything. So I'm going to put it back on the cardioid. Okay. So omnidirectional is going to be your best bet in the studio, but at least if you're picking up like say you want to record a large group, you know, using an omnidirectional mic would be the best way to go if you were in a space that wasn't highly reverberant already, right? Like if it was a dead space and you wanted to use that omnidirectional, then it would pick up all the nuance of all the different voice timbres without picking up overtones or anything like that. Okay. And then this last one, I don't have a line mic, but that would be the same thing as what I was talking about earlier as the pencil mic. And it looks, I really thought I had one, but it looks similar to this, but it's just long and skinny. It looks literally just like a long tube. And that's something you might use for like an overhead mic for the drum kit or something like that. So that's not something that we generally use for vocals. I just wanted to put it in there so that you could see that particular type of cardioid pattern and how it works. You can see it's got a little sensitivity on all four sides, but it's going to have it because of the direction. It's not going to. It's going to pick up mostly just speech. Like if you were to see an overhead mic being hung over a newscaster or something, you know, or in a TV show, like on the late night show, you see an overhead mic being hung over top. That would be more of a line or a gradient type mic. So that's going to pick up speech tones more easily. Okay, so the types of mics and their use for recommendations. Number one, and we already talked about this a little bit, and that's the Shure SM58. That's going to really be your best bet. Now, this one is the Beta 58. There's not a huge difference between the SM58 and the Beta 58. I believe really the only difference is the cardioid. The Beta 58 has the super cardioid versus Shure SM58 having more of just that basic cardioid pattern. But the cool thing about this is that it reinforces the higher frequencies, so it gives you a clear, crisp tone, but it also doesn't give you like this big bass boost. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Check 2. Okay, so if I put this right here and I sing ah versus ah, well, let me turn this one off. I don't know if is that still loud enough for you guys? Can y'all hear that okay? No. All right, so my condenser is also picking up some of this, but anyhow, I can put this as close to my mouth as I want, and it's not going to change the lower tones. It's still going to give me a nice even lower sound. Same thing if I were to sing a high note, it's not going to feedback or only pull up certain frequencies. It's going to give you the most well-rounded clear tone for the singing voice. And so that's why the Shure, either SM58 or Beta 58, is going to be the best bet for singing. At least for our singers, right? Because our singers are pretty used already to trying to find that chiaroscuro, kind of trying to find that happy medium in their tone. And so this is going to be a really nice mic for them. And I also put this little link down here because this gives you a little bit more than just the Shures. I just feel that these are the best, and these were also the author's picks. So I put that on there in case you were interested in looking at other brands or other models. Okay, so those are the dynamic mics. So remember, the dynamic mics are generally going to be your cardioid patterns. They're also going to be ones that are not powered. So you don't need any sort of phantom power on whatever you are using for amplification for a dynamic microphone. Now your condenser mics, they're going to give you great sound, but they're going to be very sensitive and they're going to need to be powered. So that's going to have bearing on what kind of amplification we use. The AKGs are probably my favorite. The one I'm using right here is a Rode, and this is an NT2. The Audio Technica is pretty expensive, but again, really, really great. And the Newman is like crazy expensive, but one of the best. I've got a couple AKGs over here that I'm going to speak into in a minute for you guys. But, and they're fairly affordable if you do want some sort of, more of a condenser mic than a dynamic mic for, you know, whatever use you need. And again, this guide gives you more options besides just these here. Okay, so these are the examples that I have for you guys. These are the mics, and the reason I chose these is because these are the ones that I have at my house. So if there are other microphones out there, if you guys want to take a visit to the Guitar Center, or I don't know what other kind of big box music stores y'all have around your area. We don't have any here. I have to go to Myrtle Beach to get anything, or I just get everything on Amazon. But you know, obviously there's much more than what I'm showing you today. This is just what I had on hand. So I wanted to be able to speak through some of them and show you the difference in a few of them as well. So the GLS audio, that's the one that is closest to the pencil microphone. It's designed mainly for instruments, but I remember the first jazz gig I had with the jazz big band at my undergrad school, I used this microphone. So they are used for vocals as well. It just doesn't give you the clear tone that this condenser mic is giving us. So hold on. So you can hear the difference. It's a little bassier. It doesn't have the warmth that the Shure had. Can you guys hear a difference, or does it still sound like it's just coming through the condenser? No, it's okay. Okay. So I'm scared if I turn this PA speaker around, it's going to feed back against my monitor speaker. So I don't want to hurt your ears. So anyhow, this is the GLS. This is going to be similar to the Shure SM57, and the 57 is like the next step down from the 58, which is the dynamic microphone I showed you a minute ago. So if this is all we had, this would be fine, but it doesn't give you the warmth in accord with the higher frequencies that the Shure gives us, or the other dynamic mic that I spoke through for you gave us. Okay, so now I'm going to speak through the AKG. Hold on just a second. This is my new favorite microphone because this is just like butter. This thing is amazing. And I made a little recording earlier that I'm going to play for you guys, and you're not allowed to judge me because I hadn't warmed up yet. But I sang through all these different microphones, and you can, I mean, you have to really listen, but you can hear a difference between them. And this one is really even and smooth, but you can hear some background noise in this one that you can't hear through the Shure. So that's, again, another reason why this Shure 57 or Shure 58 is going to be your industry standard, because it's your go-to gal. So this is and again, this is the cheaper of the dynamic microphones, the AKG D5. This is a super cardioid, and it's got high feedback suppression and an integrated pop filter. So that's one thing that you could hear in this one that you couldn't hear in this one. Like if I said Polly picks peanuts, not so much. Polly picks peanuts, still kind of smooth. But if I go back to the GLS, Polly picks peanuts, it's much more sensitive to the popping, right? So that's something to consider when you're picking out a microphone, is if it has an integrated pop filter or if it's going to be sensitive to those types of plosives. Okay, so Now back to the Shure. This is the Beta 58, and this is the one that I use on every gig, unless somebody has a better one, which there are some really, really good Shure 57s that have come out recently that are wireless, and they are amazing. I mean, they can like double the sound that I'm getting out of this one, but I just haven't been able to come off of the money for them as of yet, but one day. So, all right. The next one I'm going to talk into is the AKG C5. Now, the difference between the AKG D5 and C5 is going to be the fact that the D5 is the dynamic mic versus the C5 being the condenser mic. Okay. So obviously the condenser is going to be more sensitive to outside noise and to background noises.
Fran, we've
Yes.
had a request from the chat. Can you turn yourself up a little bit when you talk into those?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Is that better? Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is the condenser mic. You can hear this is like huge, right? But if I took this out on a gig, it's good for live music, but it's also kind of sensitive. So if it's a loud room, you could be in trouble, right? Because it's picking up, I can hear a little bit of a hiss. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it picks up a lot of outside background noise. So where it's got the cardioid pattern that is really beneficial, but sometimes it can be a little too sensitive depending on the space you're in. And also it doesn't have that built-in pop filter that we heard in the Shure and or in the AKG for that matter. So that's going to be the difference between your dynamic and your condenser. You can really hear the difference. The condenser is going to give you a much fuller sound. Okay. Now the next one is the NT1A. Doesn't want to go in. There we go. Okay, so you can already see how sensitive that one is, right? I can't turn that one up but so much because this is going to be your. Let me. If I turn the other condenser down, you're not going to be able to hear me very much. But if I turn this one up too much, it's going to feed back. So this one generally is going to be your higher quality. It's not going to be as high quality as the one that I'm using over here. The NT2 is going to give you a much fuller sound. It's also going to give you that that option to switch the patterns. But if you want a really good condenser mic that's got your cardioid pattern and the large diaphragm, it's going to be this NT1A. And that one, you can see, I mean, all of the condenser mics are expensive, but out of the Rode family, this is going to be the most affordable one, is the NT1A. Okay, and then the last one is going to be this one right here that I'm speaking through, the NT2A, because we've got the switchable multi-pattern, and it's got a nice full even round tone, but I can change that pattern, depending on the space or the necessity of the microphone itself. So that's another reason why it makes this one a little bit more pricey. So, and then this last slide I put up, I just thought this was kind of an interesting little picture. If you were to want to set up some sort of a studio, like say you do voiceover work. I know I have a friend, Laura, who does a lot of voiceover work, and I don't know what your studio setup is, but this would be a great one for doing voiceover work. Or if you wanted to do some basic recording in your studio itself, you would just want to make sure that you hang your condenser from above, and then it's going to pick up more through that plume along the top of the microphone, because if it is the cardioid pattern, remember that it's not going to pick up from underneath, it's going to pick up from above. So that's why this picture has the microphone hanging from above like this. That doesn't mean that the singer needs to do this. They can still speak directly across. You just want to make sure that you're using this part of the microphone rather than this part of the microphone, if that makes sense. Okay, and there are my sources. So, oh, I thank you. So, questions?
Well, I just found this so fascinating, and I spent a lot of the time looking. I got my microphone out, and I was trying to look at it to figure out where the diaphragm is and what I'm looking at here because I just have no clue. But I did notice I do have a little. I think I can switch between. What is that word? Starts with a C. Say it again.
The cardioid?
Cardioid. I think that symbol is here because I see a butt. And on
Mhm.
this side, I have a round circle. So I think that must mean omnidirectional.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I think I can switch. The only thing is I just don't know well enough like what I need to do if I'm using this to like when I teach on Zoom and I'm using this to like model examples for my students of how I want them to sing a phrase. Which one of these settings I put it on, and do I like face it to myself or do I just sing into it straight this way or etc. That's what I was trying to figure out during your thing.
For yours, I would just leave it on its base and I would just keep it on the cardioid.
Okay.
And I think that would give you the sensitivity you need without so much sensitivity that it's going to start getting static on the other end, right? Because you're not going to hear it, but your student is going to go, wow, it's really crackly. And that's the feedback that they're getting on their side.
Interesting. And do I like leave it straight up and down or do I point it towards myself? You know?
I guess it would depend on like how low your desk is in relation to
Okay.
where your mouth is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If it's like level like this, I would probably angle it more. Whereas if it was sitting lower down, I would probably leave it more just standing straight up kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you. See, I learned so much. I know what the butt symbol means now. I'm
I
excited about that.
appreciate that you appreciate the butt because
Yeah.
I was scared when I said that people would go, "What?"
Now, girl, it's very descriptive.
Okay. Uh-oh. What happened to all my people?
Upside
Oh,
down.
because I'm still sharing the screen. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, there we go. There, I see everybody now.
We have a lot of good things in the chat. Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, I see the chat there now. Okay, great. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I didn't see your notice earlier about being turned down so much.
Yes, we got it. I asked
Fran,
you right when that chat came.
I have a question.
Hello.
Hey, so the other night when we were on a Zoom together and I was getting all that feedback, I thought it was, you had mentioned, check your chords, girl, because you're crackling all over. And so I did check my chords last night and I realized that and because I also have the focus right, I checked my chords for my microphone, my microphone, and also the microphone, which I think I have the small one that you were talking about. I have that one underneath my piano, the pencil microphone.
Yeah.
So so I checked both of those chords and that wasn't what was giving me feedback, but my headset microphone was going, but why was that feeding back through my Focusrite into the sound for my client? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think the headphones necessarily would have anything to do with the feedback.
I didn't think so either. I didn't know.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
do you remember where your gain was? You know, do you have the 2i2 again?
What? Here for a workshop, Fran. School me.
Let me see.
Don't laugh at me, Laura.
So if you're looking at the front of your Focusrite, which this cord isn't very long, sorry. if you're looking at the front of your Focusrite, you'll see these
Yes.
knobs right here. You can see the
Yes.
one that's lighting up is the one that I'm using here. This is going to be your gain or your input volume. So if you've
Okay.
got that turned up too much, it could cause a crackle. If it wasn't your
Oh,
cable, then it could be the actual volume in relation to where you are in accord with the mic, because you naturally just have a full speaking tone, right? And that's going to be the general case for most of us, is that we're just so used to not being amplified that as soon as we put our robust tone into an amplified system, we've then got to play with that gain or that input volume.
okay. Okay, so now on yours, the volume that's in the big, well, I can ask you those questions. The gain is what I've got to play with
Yeah.
to make that not crackly.
Yeah.
Okay.
The big knob goes for your monitor, but if you're not running through a monitor,
Right.
then I
Okay.
would play with that as well. Because if I
Okay.
turn up, I'm going to turn mine up, and I hope I don't hurt anybody's ears, but
No, you're still sort of low, Fran. Your volume's still sort of low.
is that better?
Yes.
See, I turned up my volume and then I turned up my monitor, and now I'm getting like, if I talk any louder, it's going to start feeding back. So sometimes
Oh,
you just have to play with those two levels to get them to a happy.
okay.
It's just like if you were using a PA, the volume of the actual channel versus the gain on that channel, and then the main volume of the overall amplified system itself. Those three things have to work together or you're going to get a distortion.
I think all of it, like we all need this because we're all coming from, well, I say we all, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but we're so used to the acoustic life and we know enough about microphones to be dangerous. And now here we are and everything is online. And I'm like, oh, cool. I hooked all this up and now I can, have all these lessons online. But my adult students were the ones that were telling me about the microphone feedback. I think my young ones did, they're afraid of their own shadows. They're not going to say anything. But it was you guys when we got on the Zoom, and then also my older students were able to tell me that I was feeding back, and I wasn't quite sure how because when I would play with my chords, they were all working fine. So
Right.
it's that I have you're exactly right. I have my gain set too high.
Yeah. And Jill, you're right. If she's using headphones, then that big silver knob on the far right is going to control the volume on your headphones, which will then eliminate any of that potential issue between I'm running into a monitor. Right. So my monitor is sitting directly here in front of me, and then my microphone is here. So if my monitor level or my microphone level are too high, they're going to interact. But if you've got headphones on, then you're eliminating that interaction.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I thought this was going to last like 10 minutes. I was so worried that I wouldn't have enough information, and I just realized it's 56. I'm so sorry, y'all.
No, this was
That's
perfect.
good. Great.
Your information is fascinating, Fran. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I need
gosh.
to watch it again, I think. There's so many things I got to take notes on and
Yes.
follow through and
Oh, of
review.
course. Yeah,
Yes.
and like I said, I'm happy to send you guys this PowerPoint if y'all want this information. Yeah,
Definitely. That would be excellent to see.
I'll send it to Jill, and then she can send it out. And those that want it can have it, and those who don't can delete it.
Super. Thank you so much, Fran. Does anyone have any last minute thoughts for Fran? Questions, comments, or concerns? Well, Fran, I just appreciate you so much. Round of applause.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank y'all for coming and listening and being so nice.
Thank you.
You're awesome. We appreciate you. I appreciate you all joining us for this workshop today, and we will end it with that. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon, and see you on Thursday to watch the honors recital from our NATS adjudication this week.
Sounds
Yay.
good.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Fran, can you send that?